Hey, good morning. This is Robert Phoenix here. Let me just turn down the reverb so it's not like I'm talking to you in a massive hall. What's happening, everybody? Welcome to today's show, which is 15 Minutes of Flame. I've been messing around with some stuff on Spreaker, and I actually uploaded a track, but for some reason it's not playing. I've got this new intro music, and I'd love for it to play. You would think you just click on it, and it just plays. I really love Spreaker. Don't get me wrong. It's a superior in many ways to Blog Talk, and I don't want to diss them. But the one thing about Blog Talk I will say is that it was very easy to program things. You could load all your tracks into your track library and hit them. And if I wanted to, I could program 20 shows in advance with Blog Talk. I haven't really quite figured that out yet with Spreaker, and they send me the text with how to do it, and I haven't quite nailed that part down yet. But we do know we have good audio that we like, and there's a phone app now available that you can access, and you put this show right on your phone, and you can listen through your cell phone. How about that? Did not have that with Blog Talk Radio. So we're learning, we're growing, we're adapting and evolving here with Spreaker. How is everybody today? It is a lovely day here in Austin, Texas. Clear blue skies. Thank you, Lords of Geoengineering Spraying, that you have ceased your operation, even if for a few hours, where I can remember what it was like to have a sky that belonged to nature, you and me and God. So let's talk about a few things. I want to get into what's happening in North Korea. There's some very interesting things going on here, and I'm trying to kind of work through sort of the part and parcel of what's happening there. And one of the things that we've seen with the demonization of the former Soviet Union is that we've returned to a Cold War status. And when you have the Cold War status, obviously, it's very easy to sell people on the idea that we need more arms, that we need more jets, that we need more anything that's going to be military and protect our safety and our babies. Okay? So the Cold War is really important. And the Cold War is kind of a backup on the War of Terror, because the War of Terror is another marketing ploy for more weapons and more jets and more surveillance and all those things. So it's kind of like, false enemy one and false enemy two. Now, the Cold War has really sped up just over the course of the last, month or so, with Tillerson making all these allegations against Russia, and they're kind of backpedaling it a little bit and launching, the Tomahawks into Syria, and Russia getting all up in arms. And now we've got the revisiting of the Cuban Missile Crisis in North Korea. I mean, that's really what it's about. So it's all Kennedy timeline, Cold War timeline, the inversion effect. That's the scenario. Because in this version, it's really Russia. I mean, on the surface, Russia appears to be very cool, right? They're not out to dominate the world and spread their version of Russo democracy. Not that I'm aware of. And yet here we are running around the world spreading our version of American democracy, which is a lot like sort of how the old school communists were, but the old school communists did it much more subtly in some ways. You did that big land grab after World War II, and then the incursions into areas like Vietnam and Korea. About that. So here's what I think is, before I get into what's happening in Korea, because I think there's a bigger play here. I think the big play is China. And the Trump administration is using North Korea as a stalking horse. And I'll tell you why I think that. But before I do, I ran across this story. There are two things I ran across today. Both were connected to the New York Times. Let me find this one story. You guys will Appreciate this. This is from the New York Times, which has its crosshairs on Jared Kushner, which is interesting, right? Given that there are, I'm sure, within 2 degrees, a 6-degree separation from the Kushner family and the New York Times folks. Although Carlos Slim runs the New York Times now, doesn't he? So who knows? Who knows what's going on there? Okay, but let's talk about this. This is bribe cases, a Jared Kushner partner, and potential conflicts. So Kushner is kind of running businesses. Not kind of, he is. He's running businesses while he's in the White House, acting as the de facto president behind the scenes, President Kushner. But he has some unusual business partners. We've already talked about George Soros, and how Soros loaned him and his brother $250 million. It's anywhere between $250 to $280, $230 to $280, give or take $50 million. We know it's over $200 million for their real estate venture and holding together. Well, there's another interesting business partner that Jared Kushner has a strong connection with. It's actually a family. Their name is Steinmetz. They live in Israel. And they built a fortune as one of the world's leading diamond traders. People should just stop buying diamonds. Come on now. Am I right? They're just, look, they look great and everything. Just they're pretty rocks. They're pretty rocks. And that we've all decided that, hey, there's some really amazing value. It's everlasting. It's hard. It's never going to break. That's a symbol of a marriage, correct? That's why it has some inherent value. There's so many facets to it. It's beautiful and it's enduring. That's supposed to be the message, right? It's just a rock. Just a rock. What would happen if we just stopped buying diamonds? I wonder where the millennials are in buying diamonds, by the way. I wonder where they are. That'd be a really interesting thing to kind of, I think a lot of things that we take for granted that have been around for a long time, they're just going to go away. The millennials are just going to say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not that into that. Diamonds, nah, no thanks. And, they may say, well, this is a blood libel, and that it comes out of the misery and suffering of people who are mistreated and under conditions that are horrific. They may make some sort of social justice cause, perhaps, or they may just say, just not into it. Let's get just a nice band of, grass and put it around your finger, or maybe not even get married, since traditional marriage and family values aren't a part of the deal for the most part, not every millennial, okay, but let's just say less people are getting married and less people are having kids in this generation. So less people are buying diamonds. Less people are buying wedding rings. Does that make sense? Okay, let's come on with the story here. Okay. So the Kushners have been, or Jared specifically, has been dealing with the Steinmetz family. And Kushner Company's spokeswoman and several Steinmetz representatives say Ray Steinmetz was behind Raz. Oh, I missed 9/11. Was behind the deals. His uncle and the family's most prominent figure is the billionaire Benny Steinmetz, who is under scrutiny by law enforcement authorities in 4 countries. In the United States, federal prosecutors are investigating whether representatives of his firm bribed government officials in Guinea to secure a multi-billion-dollar mining concession. You can bet your ass he bribed those people. This is how business is done. This is how big-time business is done. And people inside of the various governments of the world are enablers. They take the money, they look the other way, and this is how we have a massively corrupt system. There's no oversight. There's no checking of who's doing what and how the business is actually being handled or carried out. You know, the UN has such an investment in Agenda 2030, Agenda 21, and you know the green cities, the sustainable cities initiative, and all that crap. And you know, they're all over American cities right now. Really interesting stuff. Look into the relationship with HUD and taking HUD dollars and HUD grants and connecting them back to Agenda 2030. And in Agenda 2030, they're moving people around in various cities, various locations. So the UN is very, very happy to get involved in that. But where is the UN when it comes to looking into bribes and things like that in places like Guinea, where people are doing really bad business and the conditions are atrocious? Where's the UN with stuff like that? It's not there, I can tell you, because if it was there, boy, they'd have troops on the ground. And they'd say, look at these conditions, they're deplorable. They're deplorable, but they don't. They look the other way. No, they're much more interested in transforming how we're living in this country. Low-hanging fruit. Okay, let's keep going here. So his uncle and the families, now we're talking about Raz Steinmetz. His uncle and the family's most prominent figure is the billionaire Benny Steinmetz, who is under scrutiny by law enforcement authorities in 4 countries. The United States federal prosecutors are investigating whether representatives of his bribed government officials in Guinea to secure multi-billion-dollar mining concession. In Israel, Mr. Steinmetz was detained in December and questioned in a bribery and money laundering investigation. In Switzerland and Guinea, prosecutors have conducted similar inquiries. Okay, so this is who Jared Kushner is doing business with. The Steinmetz partnership with Mr. Kushner underscores the mystery behind his family's multi-billion-dollar business and its potential for conflicts with his role as perhaps the second most powerful man in the White House, behind only his father-in-law, President Trump. No, he is the most powerful person in the White House. Trump isn't even number 2. That would go to Ivanka. I think Trump's probably number 4. I think it's Jared, Ivanka, Pence, Trump. That's what I think. Maybe Trump gets knocked down a few notches. Maybe Wilbur Ross. Maybe Cohen and Mnuchin might be a little more powerful than Trump. Maybe Trump's around 6 or 7. Although Mr. Kushner resigned in January from his chief executive role at Kushner Companies, he remains the beneficiary of trusts that own the sprawling real estate business. Remember, he's got a brother who's basically doing his business for him. They're in business together, okay? It's not like I have a business and I'm elected president and I have to stop being an astrologer. Yes, I'm today, as of 27th of April, I've decided to step down as my role as astrologer and focus solely on the United States, the people, its intended problems, challenges, joys, hopes, and aspirations. And my son has absolutely no interest in astrology. So he won't be taking over the family business anytime soon. So you can rest assured that from here on out, it's just me and the rest of the country. His brother's doing business. Come on. Let's read a little more. The firm has taken in part in roughly $7 billion in acquisitions over the last decade. You know, there are countries, small countries, that don't do that kind of business. Many of them backed by foreign partners whose identities he will not reveal. He will not reveal his partners in foreign countries. That's as bad as the Hillary Clinton stuff with the Clinton Foundation. The difference between the Clinton Foundation and Kushner and Trump, and particularly Kushner, is that the Clinton Foundation was a foundation that was masquerading as a business. With Kushner, there's no masquerading. It is a business. Actually, they're both crime syndicates. Shh. Shh. That's my sense. Okay. I can't really be sure about that. Can't be sure. So I'm just putting it out there. Waiting for evidence. I have to Alex Jones myself on that one. But clearly he's involved with somebody who's got some some unusual investigations going on with their business practices, and they're in the realm of criminal investigation. Okay, I'm just looking at the dots here, and so is the New York Times. All right, let's keep going. Last month, his company announced, this is Kushner's company, that it ended talks with the Anbang Insurance Group, a Chinese financial firm linked to leading members of the ruling Communist Party. The potential agreement, first disclosed by the New York Times, had raised questions because of its favorable terms for the Kushners. Dealings with the Steinmetz family could create complications for Mr. Kushner. The Justice Department, led by Trump appointees, oversees the investigation into Benny Steinmetz. Let me read that again. Okay, this is important to understand. All right, this is why things get so freaking corrupt. Dealings with the Steinmetz family could create complications for Mr. Kushner. The Justice Department, led by Trump appointees, oversees the investigation into Benny Steinmetz. So his father-in-law's people in the DOJ are involved in the investigation of Steinmetz, who's been doing business with Kushner. Can you see a bit of a problem there? Even as Mr. Kushner's company maintains executive business ties to Israel, as a top White House advisor, he has been charged with leading American efforts to broker peace in the Middle East as part of his broad global portfolio. Mr. Kushner continues to work with the Office of the White House Counsel and Personal Counsel to ensure he recuses from any particular matter involving specific parties in which he has a business relationship with a party to the matter, said Hope Hicks, a White House spokeswoman. A terrific partner. Representatives for Mr. Kushner and the Steinmetzes put distance between Raz Steinmetz and his uncle Benny. Risa Heller, a spokeswoman for the Kushner companies, called Raz a terrific partner and added, he's the only Steinmetz that we have done business with. In a statement provided by his attorney, Raz Steinmetz, none of my investment entities has invested in any transactions with Benny Steinmetz or any of his investors. Louis Solomon, an attorney at Greenberg Traurig LLP, who represents one of Benny Steinmetz's companies, said any business relations between Raz and Benny were 2 decades old, and said the two men had not had contact since 2013. Do you really believe that? Okay, well, give them the benefit of the doubt. But these family ties run very deep, and this is one of the challenges of the Kushner placement inside the office. He should not be involved in the White House. I'm sorry, it's much more complicated than what we see on the surface. Okay, it's business and government. It is Pluto and Capricorn, and in fact, Jared Kushner is a Capricorn, so he's actually living out the rise of the corporocratic state. I mean, theoretically, we're verging very close to the definition of fascism, where there's a merger of the corporate and the government state, and we're very, very close to it. And here we have a Capricorn in the White House that's ushering in perhaps the age of this corporocratic fascism. Another interesting piece that I found, and that I've actually looked at and played with, to be honest with you. I mean, I went there a long time. I went there probably about a month ago. And I found this connection between the young actor who played Damien in The Omen 2 and Jared Kushner. So somebody else is picking up on these memes again. It's very, very interesting. Yeah. That's all I'll say about that. So what I wanted to talk about more than the Kushner piece, or at least along with the Kushner piece, which I think is important and we need to understand it, is what's happening with Korea. So I want to read you. I was really interested in this THAAD missile system because I wanted to break it down for some of you. If you're not familiar with the THAAD missile system, it's a pretty sophisticated missile system that has to do with shooting down other missiles. So THAAD is designed to intercept short, medium, and intermediate long-range missiles during their terminal flight phase. Equipped with long-range radar, it is believed to be capable of intercepting North Korea's intermediate-range ballistic missiles. Okay, so what the Trump administration does, it is now deployed THAAD, this missile system in South Korea. And I think it's really funny. Check this out. Only Trump would do this. The system was moved onto a golf course in Seongju, North Gyeongsang Province, South Korea on Tuesday, prompting clashes between locals and police. I guess the locals like their golf course. They don't want no missile system on their golf course. Well, South Koreans remain split over the issue. Here's where it comes into play. This is all you need to know. Beijing has repeatedly spoken out against THAAD over fears it will undermine its own deterrence capabilities. However, Harris said on Wednesday that it poses no threat to China. Russia has also voiced concern over the effectiveness of THAAD's deployment in South Korea, urging those involved to consider the escalation of tensions it will cause. Harris also stated on Wednesday that the U.S. can defeat any North Korea missile attack on the U.S. carrier strike group, which is currently in the region. Okay, you think that that's really the case? I think that what's going on with those ships is just a red herring. There's something else going on there. Referring to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, he said that Washington is aiming to bring him to his senses rather than to his knees. Now, Kim Jong-un has kind of painted himself into a corner, a bit of a corner, right? Because he's basically said, we're going to smash you, we're going to smash the West, we're going to blow things up, it's all going to be kind of nuclear and intensified, and we'll incinerate San Francisco, it'll be Sodom and Gomorrah by the Bay, all that stuff, right? So he can't really back off that position. Because if he backs off that position, it looks like he's capitulating, and he will lose the kind of the spellbinding power he has over his people. So he has to continue to posture and pose and to look strong. And he can only sustain that posture and pose for a limited period of time until the people will say, well, are you going to do something? And I don't know. I haven't spoken with any North Koreans lately, but I think that many of them would be willing to die for a just war and a just cause. So I don't think he has to worry about how they feel about him taking something to level red. So he can't really do a rope-a-dope and say, oh, yeah, you know, we just want to have nice relations with the West. Just leave us alone. You know, we're going to send you a year's supply of kimchi. And that's not going to work. So he's got to keep up this level of kind of pre-agitation and playing the role of the strong man. He has to. Psychically, he's bound to that with his people, because if he doesn't, he loses everything. But this is not for North Korea. This missile defense shield is for China. It is for China. Now, here's where this whole thing with Trump and his Sun, conjunct Uranus, conjunct the true node comes into play. Now, he just had, what's his name, Lee, here or on the phone. Lee was just in the United States. He was hanging out at Mar-a-Lago eating chocolate cake while we were bombing Syria. That was for his benefit, really. And they made some kind of a business deal where China said that they would be in an alliance with the United States to basically give word of mouth support to backing the United States with North Korea. But if you're Lee, you can't trust Trump. Nobody can trust Trump. I mean, I think even at some point, maybe even Jared Kushner can't trust Trump. I hope that's the case, really. But I think that's probably the most extreme case. So here you have Trump striking kind of a deal with Lee. Meanwhile, he's deploying this THAAD missile system in South Korea on a golf course of all places. And who's it really for? Is it for South Korea? Or maybe it's for China? maybe this is a way for the United States to get a closer imprint into China. Because what if the United States somehow got into a skirmish with China, and China decided to fire missiles, which it is clearly capable of, all the way from not just China. Do you know where they have missile silos? They have them on the Tibetan Plain. They have missile silos in the highest part of the planet. That's one of the reasons why they went into Tibet. Anyway, wouldn't it be easier if you could have a first wave of defense in North Korea with missiles, so that the ones that got through, because normally what they would do is they would launch probably 50 at a time, if that's what was going to happen. Wouldn't it be better if you had the THAAD there, so you could take out of the 50 maybe about 20 or 30, and then the rest you would have like some other kind of missile defense system maybe lined up in Hawaii. They'd pick them off there, and I'm sure they have them there. And then the next line would be the West Coast, so that by the time it was all said and done, in a first strike scenario, you would have neutralized China's first strike scenario. Maybe one or two get through. Small price to pay. And then you launch the counter. And if the Chinese have kind of shot their wad, so to speak, on that launch, and the counteroffensive, by the way, would happen almost immediately. There wouldn't be any time to really discuss it. You would have basically these anti-missile defense systems knocking missiles out, and then right after that would happen, missiles would be deployed so that Beijing wouldn't have really time to react. So this is all, I think, kind of in their own way, getting ready to deal with China. And I think there's a reason why, and it's not from the perspective of the United States versus China. I think it's China versus the central bankers, and China versus the globalists, and China versus the Rothschild crime syndicate, because they went in and they helped China get up to speed. I mean, where was China going to get the money? They get it from the U.S. Where does the U.S. get the money from? Taxpayers? No, it borrows it. So now China has become an economic power. And the Chinese are very crafty. They're some of the smartest people on the planet. And I think that they think that they can outthink and outmaneuver the Rothschild crime syndicate family and the IMF and the World Bank and all these other entities. And that they can run the show, that they can run the table. And then they could take over and basically become the global governance of the world. It would be the China world order. And not just China being a part of this whole other kind of, Rothschild New World Order effect, that they would actually be the ones running everything. Now, if you look at movies and you look at what's happening in Hollywood and how the Chinese are playing such a large role, even Ivanka Trump's kids are learning Mandarin, there could be some truth to this, right? But I don't think I don't think China wants to play second fiddle. I think China will want to run the table. So who's really behind wanting to do all this? Is it the United States? Hey, China's encroaching on, the South China Seas. We got the trade deficit and all this other stuff, and we owe them so much money since we borrowed a ton of money from them for the bailouts in 2008. Blah blah blah. Or is it because there is another entity involved that sees China as a global threat, and not just the United States, but a global threat to everything? So I think this is part of what's going on, and that North Korea is just a red herring. I think this is all about China. And the Chinese probably know this as well, and they're running their schemes and their models and, their game plan. So it's very interesting to watch, at least from this point of view. And it clearly is, in the shadow of this whole Cold War kind of theater that's going on, with North Korea being the new Cuba and, Russia being the old communist bear without communism. Now they're, who knows what they are, fascists, I don't know. Apparently, by the way, something has happened again in Berkeley yesterday. It's got a, let's see. I was watching, so Berkeley's been fascinating. to watch is a slice of Americana. You know, Ann Coulter, she canceled her speaking engagement. So it's really fascinating is watching these conservatives, neoconservatives, the paleoconservatives, the alt-righters go in and probe Berkeley. Like they're like poking Berkeley like a stick, right? Like Berkeley's a dog. And they're just poking it. Like, yeah, we're come in there, free speech, hey, free speech, free speech. Remember, you're the bastion of free speech. And they kept moving Ann Coulter around. So, you can't do it here. You can't do it here. You can't do it then. Yeah, why don't you do it when everybody's in class? We can't guarantee that you'll be protected. How about that? They can't guarantee you'll be protected. The police won't do anything. The police just stand back and the people fight. Especially if Antifa is, doing some ass kicking, which is not the case. By the way, I saw a video on that guy, Based Stickman, and he's apparently gotten he's got a GoFundMe page because he got arrested. So what happened is this is what they do. They sit back, and everything's on camera, and so they're taking videos. That park is wired. It's right, like I said, it's right across the street from City Hall and the police station and the jail, and they have these cameras switched on, and not just there, but all over. And so they're taking videos of who's wreaking havoc. And so they found out who this Based Stickman guy was. His name is Kyle Nelson, I think. And the last skirmish they had in Berkeley, which was on Patriots Day, they didn't waste any time. They just arrested him. And it's like, you're not playing today. You failed the drug test. You're not on the field today. So he, if you don't know what he did, he cracked his stick over this guy's head. This guy's running in. He's one of these Antifa warriors who are not very warrior-like. There's a lot of professors and teachers involved in Antifa. Well, there's a lot of them, and they're there. They're on the front lines, but they don't get hurt very much. They let their stooges get hurt. And apparently there's this theory that a lot of the Antifa protesters are homeless kids. There's a lot of them in Berkeley. A lot. And that they have a household and they hang out at the household and they get fed and they get money. And the whole idea is to kind of indoctrinate them into Antifa, gives them a purpose, gives them a cause, life training skills, all that stuff. And that they're taken advantage of. And I don't think that this is too far from the mark. I've heard this. So they're on the front lines. And people like Yvette Falarka, who's part of this, it's by any means necessary, right? Bannon by any means necessary. So Bannon is connected to Antifa, and it's the Bannon people that I think have the house. That's my sense. And it's like kind of this group, this community. Anyway, Yvette Falarka is there. She's always kind of near the front lines. Nothing ever happens to her. I wonder how much longer she's going to stay on the front lines. Because I guarantee you, somebody is going to figure out how to get Yvette Falarka to throw a punch, or to throw a kick, or to shoot some pepper spray. And when that happens, Yvette Falarka should be very, very scared about what might happen to her, because she could wind up in the hospital based on just what I've seen with some of these skirmishes. And it's always sort of it's the professors and the teachers, and they're kind of near the front line, and then they retreat from a safe place. They retreat to a safe place, and they leave these minions out there, to take the blows, take the brunt of whatever is coming at them. I just would be interested to see what would happen if that did happen. Anyway, interesting stuff. Now, if you feel like, I don't know, I'm not going to donate to this guy's GoFundMe. I'm not going to do that. He's got plenty of money, and I'm not going to suggest it. So I'm just not, because I don't even know who he is. I mean, a guy could be, CIA or COINTELPRO or FBI for all I know. I don't know, so I'm just telling you what happened. That's all. All right, I think that's it. By tomorrow, I'll learn how to play this track. And I'll have intro music and outro music. And by the way, there is an app. There's a phone app. I can't find it. But there's a phone app from Spreaker that I made. And you can actually listen to these programs on the phone. And I just want to give a shout out, a real quick shout out to Julie A., who sent a really nice donation into the show. And I want to thank you for that. And no donation, no matter how small or how large, goes unnoticed. Thank you very much for that. It allows me to pay my chiropractor and get my back fixed, which is my new project. I went to the chiropractor on the new moon in Taurus. Looking forward to resettling my bones here. With that, you know what to do. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to open what's possible. Enjoy the sunshine wherever you are, if there is any sunshine, and if not, generate some yourself. Be the light within. I'm Robert Phoenix. I'll see you tomorrow with the Friday Forecast.